Marvel Comics just announced they are canceling the entire line of X-Men comic books. There's a reason this is going down, and I believe it has to do with the X-Men now coming in to the MCU.
It's like the news, but for nerds. Subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Today's shout out goes to Matt Nord. Indeed, Cap is the father of Peggy's children in the main MCU timeline, which is really weird. We'll do another nerd card question at the end of this video. What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. I'm, of course, Josh. This is the Den of Nerds, and yes, I'm having a really bad hair day. Be nice in the comments section, you motherfucker. So it's been sort of a light news week. Not a lot of crazy stuff going on. We're sort of all in the wake of what happened on Game of Thrones Sunday. That shit was wild, dude. But yesterday, a bit of news came out that's actually earth-shattering when it comes to Marvel comic books. And as I said in the intro, I believe this has something to do with what's going on in the MCU. And so yes, we are covering a comic book topic today. We don't actually normally cover comic book stuff. We just kind of don't really do that here. It's more popular to talk about the movie stuff. But as I just said, this will impact the MCU in a very important way, which I'm going to get to at the end of the video. But first, let's talk about the actual news. So we have to start with something that we've known about for a while now, but that is that prolific comic book writer Jonathan Hickman is making his return to Marvel Comics to pen 2 X-Men books in July. Now, this was huge news when it came out, very crazy. I'm particularly excited about it. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know I'm a big Jonathan Hickman fan. I never thought Hickman was coming back to mainstream comics at all, and the fact that he's coming back now to do the X-Men comics is crazy. And then yesterday, it was basically made clear that Jonathan Hickman convinced Marvel Comics to cancel the entire line of X-Men books to make way for his stories. While doing an interview with comicbook.com, Jonathan Hickman revealed this very fact, why it was important, and what it means for the future of the X-Men book. Here's a few things that Hickman said in that interview. He said, "In the spirit of what works and also what the market is used to, I didn't feel like just doing a new #1 was enough. I also didn't think that if we were serious about what we were trying to do, we should have a mixed message in the market about what an X book is. So I argued for canceling the entire line, why it would work and why it was a good idea, and most importantly, why it was what we needed to do narratively to return the X-Men to their rightful prominent position in the Marvel Universe. We needed to sell the idea that this is what we're going to be doing for the next few years. So if you want to read an X-Men book during the run from late July through September, House of X and Power of X are the only new X books available, and everything that's going to follow is based on them. We wanted to be clear to the fans, to the stories, and just as importantly to the creators who are going to be staffing these books in the future. We wanted the message to be very clear. This is a whole new era for the X-Men. This is what we're doing now." Now, if you're not really into comic books, let me explain to you why this is insane. We thought we were never getting Jonathan Hickman back in mainstream comics. He gave us one of the best 4-year runs of Avengers I've ever read. His Fantastic Four stuff is amazing. It all led into his Secret Wars, which felt like a final note, a sort of real ending for the entire Marvel universe. And I know they kept going after that, but if you look at the sales and the popularity of books after Jonathan Hickman left and after his Secret Wars, they plummeted and went down dramatically. Him coming back to Marvel Comics, him convincing Marvel editorial to cancel the entire X-Men line. This is absolutely absurd. Huge news for Marvel Comics. I think it's actually going to be very good for Marvel Comics and push the X-Men back up to prominence, which is what they're trying to do. Now, we don't really normally talk about comic book news here. We really focus more on the TV and the movies and stuff, but check this out. So the timing of all of this, I think, is really interesting. We know now that Fox and the X-Men properties and the Fantastic Four properties are all coming back to Marvel proper. They're going to be showing up into the MCU. Now, if you've been following this channel for some time, you will know that Jonathan Hickman's stuff has been cherry-picked a lot in the MCU, especially recently. If you look at Infinity War and Endgame, Jonathan Hickman's characters, plot devices, stories, some of the shots he has in these comic books, they show up in these movies. Now, the Russo brothers have teased Secret Wars a lot, and they've even recently talked about how they would come back for a Fantastic Four or a Doctor Doom movie in the MCU. I really believe that the Russo brothers are looking at the new Secret Wars, the Jonathan Hickman Secret Wars, and the Avengers run that was leading up to that as a big inspiration for them comic book wise. If they're big comic book fans, like I think they are, they would totally recognize Hickman and his stuff as not only great sort of postmodern new takes on this kind of story, but just perfect adaptation material for the cinematic universe. Now, the other side of this is that Jonathan Hickman would not come back to Marvel unless they were backing up the money truck. They are going to pay this guy a ton to develop these books, this story, and essentially this universe. He might even get a promotion inside Marvel as some kind of creative officer or something like that. This was a big, big get and huge for Marvel and for Hickman. But on top of that, I believe that John is looking at the movie money and the potential movie money that he could make now that there's this sort of years gap of when the X-Men will be adapted into the MCU, and he now has control of what happens to the X-Men in the comics, which is often the source material for what they do in the cinematic universe. Now, to be completely accurate about this, I do not think that Jonathan Hickman signed any sort of a deal where he's guaranteed that the stuff he writes gets adapted into the cinematic universe. I don't think that's guaranteed at all. It really depends on what he does and how the people over there with Feige view it. But I will say this, I undoubtedly believe that Hickman is the type of guy to understand how all of this is working, and that if he comes back and does this to the X-Men at a time when Marvel's looking for a new, fresh way to introduce the X-Men to the cinematic universe, that it's very possible that his stuff would be adapted, as much of it has already been adapted. And if they do adapt it, I guarantee you he wrote his contracts in a way where he will get fat royalties for anything they take from his comic books and use in the cinematic universe, which is perfect because his stuff is amazing. This is perfect for the MCU. This is perfect for Marvel Comics. Really just a huge win for all of the nerds out there. And so I wanted to do this video. I know it's like kind of an obscure kind of thing to talk about here on the news, but this is huge. I think it has big ramifications. So I want to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Have you heard about this? Do you think it will be sort of adapted into how they introduce the X-Men into the MCU? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what is the name of the independent comic book that Jonathan Hickman wrote that's sort of a Western cyberpunk take on the future and the Armageddon? What is the name of that crazy indie book by Jonathan Hickman? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.